Hi, this is Microdose U, and I'm Dr. Denise. I am a doctor of psychology, and I got a great question. Had a bit of a conversation with someone about kind of what are the safety issues? What are the related health conditions that can come up with microdosing psychedelics, specifically psilocybin and LSD? So the person's question was actually about diabetes, man. I'm going to get right into that. I do want to say that let's talk about what we know and what we don't know. And if you look up right now, if you just go and you sort of research what are the risks, what are the health issues, what are the concerns, you're going to come up with this list of physiological issues and psychological issues and then safety concerns, which I'm going to address all three of those right now. And here's the thing that, and the reason that I wanted to do this episode for you today. There's a lot that's simply not known, assumed, and basically false information. So where is this coming from? If you look at in the United States and much of the world, psychedelic medicines are in this country, in the United States, considered they call it a schedule. They are trying to reschedule a lot of these medicines with good reason. So a Schedule 1 here in the United States means that a substance, a medicine, is addictive, highly addictive. It has no medical value at all and is highly dangerous. So dangerous, like high risk, dangerous, addictive, highly addictive, and no medical value. So those three particular factors will put a medicine, a substance, a supplement, a psychedelic medicine in a Schedule 1. And it's just simply not true. Psilocybin, LSD are among the safest. And look this up. If you look at what are the safest medicines, what are high risk medicines, there are far more medicines, foods, supplements that are dangerous, addictive, maybe have no medical value. And when you look at the highest risk, all the way down at the bottom, like the lowest no risk, are things like psilocybin and LSD. So there's when people look at the mainstream information, I'm not saying ignore that. I'm saying take it in the context, which is why I want to do this episode for you today. So it is these medicines are not addictive. They are definitely not dangerous, and they absolutely have tremendous value, medical, life changing healing value. And if you follow us here at Microdose U, you know all about that. So I did want to go through very specifically some of and the question about the diabetes really prompted this. So I'm very grateful to the person that sent that question to me. So one of the most, when we look at physical health issues, and let me also add that everyone is different. We always say this is not medical advice. Work closely with your medical healthcare team, do your research, review everything, consult with us directly here. We will guide you because everybody is different. And yet what I'm talking about is the vast majority of experience, the trends, what we're seeing and what we're not seeing. So we are not seeing risks to health for microdosing, and I will even say macrodosing psychedelic medicines. We just don't see the cautions and the risks that the research is proposing, not necessarily finding data for, and yet has been around for decades and decades, since the late 50s and 60s. Oh, these are addictive, hippie medicines, so dangerous. And it just is not true. So the physiological risks are pretty nil. You will hear about things like an increase in blood pressure. We are just not finding that. Even at macrodose levels, there might be a temporary psychedelics can have a temporary increase, not dangerously so. If you are someone who has blood pressure issues, of course, talk to your doctors and look at that. However, I can say the trend is that it is not going to be an issue, and the benefits, of course, outweigh the risks here. Even the risk is pretty much nil. So particularly though, here we are always talking mostly 99% of the time, we're talking about microdosing. So you really don't see an increase in heart rate, blood pressure, et cetera, particularly at microdose levels. So it's really not a thing, even though you will read about it as if it is, just like we read that these are dangerous and addictive. It's just simply not true. So the heart valve thing is another thing you'll come across. Oh, if it has anything to do with the serotonin, which these medicines do it impact at serotonin levels, which is what makes them helpful, and there's a heart valve concern, you better not do them. So again, you have to look at that really. So we're just not seeing heart valve issues. But I will say if someone has had a cardiac concern or out of an abundance of caution, you talk to your cardiologist if you can and talk about this and monitor that. Lots of people, I know Dr. Dave has checked and gotten, all kinds of scans and everything looks terrific and perfect, and there just isn't an issue. So because medicines that target serotonin may have this kind of very small link to a heart valve issue, it was assumed, without really research, it was assumed that that microdosing psychedelics would lead to heart valve issues. And it's just not true. In fact, if you look up what's the actual research, you're going to come across this point that I'm making, that it was sort of like one of those, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, I always forget that exact expression, then it must be. Well, this is not the case because it really isn't. It's not, it's actually not a duck if you want to follow through with that story and metaphor. So again, you can check with your cardiologist, just not panning out the trend, not showing any health risks, cardiac function, blood pressure, heart valve issues, especially at a microdose level. I do want to talk about the question specifically that inspired this whole episode, which is the question about blood sugar level, especially a type 2 diabetic. So type 1 diabetics tend to they're diagnosed usually earlier, although there can be later in life type 1 diabetes. A type 2, it's usually in adulthood, blood sugar levels, et cetera. So actually the interesting research and what we're seeing is that it's extremely interesting. The development is that we're showing in the research and in the data that very low microdose levels of psilocybin LSD are showing that there is an improvement in blood sugar levels. There is an improvement in insulin resistance. So when someone's insulin resistant, they can develop a pre-diabetic or a diabetic issue. So microdosing psychedelics helps decrease that insulin resistance, which, by the way, a little note for my perimenopause, menopausal women, that's particularly helpful, even if you're not diabetic, because a lot of women talk about becoming like worried about their insulin resistance, and that starts to be maybe an issue with the drops in estrogen and progesterone. And so what we're seeing is that microdosing actually helps that. So it's an added benefit whether you're developing a diabetic issue or not. So it actually helps decrease that insulin resistance, which is what you want. Blood sugar is also an issue with diabetes, and anyone wants to keep their blood sugar at an appropriate level. Microdosing psychedelics keeps the blood sugar at an appropriate level. So that helps with, again, obesity, insulin resistance, metabolic function in general. They're also finding that, and I kind of have that face because it's just such the opposite of what you'll read. Microdosing psychedelics helps with fatty liver disease. So you don't want a fatty liver. Obviously, there's two ways you can get that: through a fatty liver disease that's not related to things that you're consuming. It can be genetic. Certainly, there's liver issues if someone's overconsumed many drugs, specifically if they are abusing alcohol. So, we're looking, and here's the thing with the research. A lot of this research is done, as we know, with animals. And there is, studies that are done with animals can generalize to humans. They can't actually take humans that have these diseases and do this research. So, the animal rights people don't like this, and yet this is what animal research is. They will take animals, they will, sort of induce certain symptoms, give them microdoses of psychedelics and see if it improves. So this is where it's coming from. And even though it's not a human, there's a lot that does generalize. I mean, this is how pharmacology does research, is they start with animal studies. And then if it reaches certain levels of approval and it passes, then they start working with humans. But they can't, if you've seen some of my prior episodes, that they can't give psychedelics to a pregnant woman and see how she does. So they will use animals to see how they do. And yet, while I'm on that topic, we see through, thousands of years that these medicines have not caused harm to people as well as to pregnant nursing women. So that, that real world data, what we see across thousands of years, really matters, even if the research is never going to show it. And I believe in some ways we're not going to see that kind of research. They can't take pregnant women and say, here, let's see if this is a risk. Who's going to sign up for that study if they think there's a risk? So instead, we look at what's really going on out there, and it just does not appear to be a risk in any way, shape, or form. So again, just to finish the diabetes, it is not only not a problem, it appears to help with a lot of medical conditions, and particularly the type 2 diabetes. I already mentioned, I'm just going through my notes here. I wanted to be very specific. So a lot of times I don't have specific notes, but I have my little bullet point here so that I don't miss anything. So I wanted to now shift into another category.
Hey, darling, we're just going to take a little tiny break from Dr. Denise right now. My name is River D. Knight, and I'm on the faculty here at Microdose U. And Dr. Denise is the greatest, and she's a doctor of psychology who is well-versed in plant medicine. I mean, there are not too many of those out there, darling. And she's been a faculty member here at Microdose U pretty much since the beginning. And I want to take a second right now, just in case, dear, you don't know about our little Patreon group. I've got to tell you something. There's nothing like this on the entire planet. Dr. Dave, a couple years ago, set up this group, this community, and the purpose of it is so we can explore things without having to worry about what we're talking about. Because you see, on the podcast here, Dr. Dave and Dr. Denise, there's only so much they can say. It's a public forum, dear. That's why Dr. Dave started this Patreon group, to enable us to say anything we want. We talk together, we have live meetings, we have a 24/7 WhatsApp chat going with some of the nicest people in the world. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody just wants to feel better, and we're all helping each other out. So I'm going to strongly suggest you at least give it a try. And not only that, we talk about where to get the medicine. We've got our trusted sources, and we promise you, you're not going to get ripped off. And the quality of the medicine is the best out there, darling. And again, we can't talk about this on the public podcast, but we can do it in our private Patreon group, dear. And some of you ask about whether we can do some personalized one-on-one coaching. The answer to that is a 100% yes. Dr. Denise has been heading up our coaching department for the past couple of years at least, and she does a great job. She's got so many success stories, it's just unbelievable. She's a great woman who you want to really meet her one-on-one if you can. But I suggest you go into Patreon first, get a feel for what that's all about, and then if you decide on having the one-on-one coaching, it's so easy to get into that. It's not a problem, darling. We'll take care of you, I promise you there. But you got to get into Patreon first. Whether you want the coaching or not, you got to get into Patreon. Because like I said, there's nothing like this in the world. How do you do it? It's so easy. You just go into the show notes on this episode right here, and Dr. Dave and Dr. Denise put a little link for Patreon. And in case you don't want to go to the show notes, you just go to the website microdoseu.com. That's microdose with a little U on the end of .com, and look for the little button that says Join Patreon. It's a paid platform, dear. It's only $12.50 a month. I mean, just think about that. If you get a couple cups of coffee in the expensive coffee shop near you, that's the same thing. And Patreon is going to help your life like you've never thought about. So again, we're going to get back to Dr. Denise right now. But before you forget, click that button to join Patreon. I want to see you there. I'm there. Dr. Denise is there. Dr. Dave is there. Let's all hang out together on Patreon. We all kind of help each other out. Now, back to Dr. Denise.
wanted to now shift into another category, which is you'll see things like, oh, we can't, if someone has bipolar, extreme psychological mental health challenges, a history of psychosis, schizophrenia, extreme bipolar in their lives or in the family, they shouldn't microdose psychedelics. Again, check with your doctor. Overall, it's just not true. In fact, there's some research that shows that microdosing psychedelics actually helps people that have psychotic issues, psychotic being they don't see reality some of the times, that their bipolar is so extreme that the emotional regulation is just very, very challenging. And those people get screened out of research studies because there's just too many variables. And yet there have been some studies, and sometimes it's a case of one person where it actually is showing that it helps. And let's talk about for a moment why this is important information and why it helps. The process within physiological, even though in the psychiatric communities and in psychological medicine and research, we sometimes don't fully understand what causes someone to have a psychotic break or psychotic processing where they're not perceiving reality in exactly, I mean, we all have our own perceptions of reality, but really like seeing things, hearing things that are not there, believing just very paranoid types of things, just not even anything close to what's happening. That's what we might refer to as psychosis. So the process in the brain and in the body that they think leads to that and is part of that, it's very complex. And yet it's very similar to what psychedelics work on in those same pathways. So doesn't it make sense that if something is caused by a disruption in that neurological, physiological process that's going to lead to a psychosis, if you use psychedelics at a microdose level, it's addressing those same pathways. So way back in my early days of working many decades ago, that was actually the research. That's what we were looking at. That's what we were seeing. And that research kind of came to a close because of the war on drugs, not because these substances were dangerous. There was this whole distortion, war on drugs, and that psychedelics were so dangerous, and that the hippies were using. It was just this counterculture and bad. And so that's what made all of this become illegal. But before that happened, they were showing that these psychedelics were actually very helpful in healing and upgrading and rewiring people's extreme struggles in reality perception, like I said, sort of psychosis. So it makes complete sense that it would help. I can tell you here at Microdose U that we have worked with a lot of people that have been diagnosed and treated for bipolar, which is that extreme high and low, just really trouble regulating emotional states, and sometimes to the point of not perceiving reality. And I can tell you that it has helped, and we have not seen any danger and any problem. Again, we want to look at all the factors, and I really like to work directly with someone who's dealing with, they're on bipolar medicines and they're not really sure how they're going to microdose. So it's very important. You'll hear us say all the time, do not stop your medicines, any of them, without really consulting with us directly. And we can really look at every single one of those factors and guide you through that path to healing. So very, very important. The other kind of category beyond just the risk to extreme mental health issues is that there's this idea, again, you probably can guess this, turns out not to be true, that incorrect idea that microdosing psychedelics is going to dull your perceptions. You're not thinking clearly. You're maybe going to make poor decisions. Again, we're just not finding that. There is actually the opposite, particularly I'll say with LSD and psilocybin, particularly with people that are using microdosing, again, very tiny specks of LSD. There is a decrease in attention issues. Focus improves. Anxiety drops. People are calmer. Judgment's better. And yes, sleep is better. Now, I will say for a lot of people, microdosing psychedelics, I often recommend, particularly if it's a new person, if you're new to microdosing psychedelics, do start earlier in the day. Not because it's like a stimulant effect necessarily, but there can be a little lift. It's not going to, in general, it's not going to lead for you to have insomnia and trouble sleeping. I know I don't like to microdose really late in the day or in the evening because it's not that I'm going to have insomnia. I just have that lift and I'm going to want to be maybe doing something and not want to go to sleep at my regular time that I would normally go to sleep, and then I'll be tired the next day. So it's not that it's going to interrupt sleep. It's more the timing of the dose. And in actuality, it improves sleep as you regulate some of the things that impact quality of sleep. And that's a whole other topic. And yet it really does seem to help, whether it's anxiety related or physiological, neurological related factors that are impacting microdosing psychedelics seems to help, not hurt the quality of sleep. So those are some general areas of safety. And I will tell you what I consider the biggest risk to microdosing and even macrodosing psychedelics. And we talk about this all the time. The biggest risk is you're going to get scammed if you do not really make sure that you're getting the medicine and vetted sources. You cannot, I just did the last episode on this, you cannot just go on the internet and start ordering these medicines. Absolutely not LSD, definitely psilocybin. It's so available. And there's a really good chance that you will get scammed. So this is why we here at Microdose U, we have vetted sources for medicines because we really want to make sure that you're getting, it should not cost a lot of money. And so you're getting the fair price and you're not going to get scammed, but you're going to get safe medicine and the real medicine. So this is why we ask for you to really check in with us here, and we will direct you to the trusted sources. The other thing that is a risk that's going to happen is if you don't know exactly how to dose. And I would say go through the Microdose U beginning guides, the beginning microdose guides, reach out to me, respond to this episode, or reach out to us here at Microdose U. Certainly come onto Patreon and have that live around the clock conversation, attend the lives. And of course, we always do the consultations where we can work directly with you and really dial in all these various factors to really have it be specific to you. So what we don't want to happen is if someone is dosing and they kind of go, oh, like this is what I'll do. And that's particularly dangerous with LSD because it's only a speck of medicine. And if you take a few extra specks, you might find yourself, it's not dangerous, but you might have an unexpected, more of a trippy experience, which particularly if you weren't expecting that, if you were out and about, you might suddenly find yourself like, uh-oh, I dosed the wrong amount. And if you don't know what you're doing, it's so hard to max accidentally if you know what you're doing, particularly with psilocybin, because you're talking about milligrams. And here we are talking about, 100 milligrams, where you would need 20 times that amount to have like a trippy experience. So there's really not a risk that you're going to accidentally take too high of a dose. But if you find yourself somehow, for some reason, in a higher dose, it's going to pass. It's going to shift in, 30 minutes. You can get up and walk around, have some herbal tea, have some water, have a snack, and that'll metabolize your medicine a little quicker. So it's really not dangerous. It just may be uncomfortable. And you may have heard me talk about where it is contraindicated for someone who has a lot of anxiety and trauma to take very high macrodoses of psychedelic. It's not needed for healing, and it can really just sort of scare people, and they can get traumatized by a really high, like ego death, where you don't even know who you are or where you are. And so, as we always talk about, this is microdosing. And yet, if you're going to play with or consider a higher dose, make sure you really do the research. Make sure you have someone with you. Talk to us about it. We will really be able to give you some guidance on that. You can't just go take a bunch of mushrooms and say, well, let's see what happens. I know people used to do that a long time ago. Probably many people still do. It is definitely not a wise way to go about it. Whether you're looking for fun or to heal, it's probably not going to lead you, and it's not necessary. You can get the healing benefits from the microdose. So with the LSD, it's a spec, and it's just really a few more specs, and you'll be in that dose, trippy dose of LSD. And yet it's easier to do because you're dealing with such small amounts. If you're working with us and you've done the LSD, you'd have to like keep spraying and spraying. So that's not accidentally going to happen. You would have to really misunderstand something to then sit there and do like, 20 sprays of LSD. And I would absolutely recommend against that. It's not necessary. So I hope that that helps. Again, these are very safe medicines. They are not addictive, and they absolutely are going to help physiological, physical health issues, as well as emotional, psychological upgrades and healing that is life changing and will help you life changing healing and upgrades in your life. Thanks, and we will see you soon.